Hello and welcome to another Lawn Fawn video. Today we are taking a look at the new outside-in stitched maple leaf dies. We're also going to be taking a look at the stitched maple leaf frame dies. And here's a look at both of those die sets next to each other. You can see that they are sized perfectly to work together. So let's take a look at what shapes these dies cut out and all the things that you can do with them. First, we have the outside-in stitched maple leaf here in the kraft cardstock. You can see it cuts this cool stitching detail of all of the details of the leaf, and it also cuts a window with a stitching detail on the outside. That's the outside-in stitching detail. This leaf is really cool on its own, as you'll see in a little bit, or you can inlay it into the opening that the die creates in a contrasting color, which is very fun. This die also has these two little vines with tiny little leaves, which are great for layering behind the big leaf to create a nice full arrangement on your card. Then there is the stitched maple leaf frame die. This die also works with the stitched maple leaf and has these little pieces that you can use to create shaker cards. So it cuts this really cool stitch frame in the shape of the maple leaf, which you could use on your own, or you could layer it with the inside of the outside-in stitched maple leaf, just like this, for a really cool look on a card as well. You can also use that frame to create a shaker card by layering it on the front of a card or over the opening that the outside-in stitched maple leaf die creates. Then you can use the little leaves and acorns that are part of the frame die to create your shaker card. So here you can see I'm layering that frame over the stitched maple leaf, and then you can put these little pieces inside, and we'll be making a shaker card in this video as well. So for the first card I'm creating today, I'm remaking a card by Elise that was just so beautiful. I have my stitched maple leaf cut from some barn door cardstock, canned pumpkin, fake tan, sunflower, and then I've cut the word fall using Louie's ABCs out of some gold glitter cardstock. Now for my background, I'm using the new Favorite Flannel collection, this green flannel. I'm using the diagonal side, and I'm making a slimline card. So I'm going to cut this with the Scalloped Slimline with Hearts landscape die. This gives me this scalloped rectangle with stitching detail, and it fits perfectly on a slimline, leaving that white border around all four sides. For my sentiment, I want to add the word happy to the die cut fall letters. So I'm using the big Scripty Words stamp set. I'm going to stamp out happy on this piece of white cardstock with black ink, and then I'll use the coordinating die to cut it out. Now to start assembling my card, I'm gluing the scalloped rectangle that I cut from the pattern paper directly to my card base. Then I'll take my stitched maple leaves and arrange them across the front. I am going to bend them a little bit along that center spine so that they have some dimension and stick up just a little bit. So I'll just be gluing down the center of each leaf. I'm just arranging them in the way I want them to look on the front of the card. And once I have them in place, I can start to glue them down. Of course, I want to start with the yellow one on the right because it is underneath all the rest of them. And I'll just work my way across. I'm just adding some liquid glue just right down the center spine of those leaves, kind of where I bent them up a little bit. And you can see that the edges of the leaves kind of pop up from that background, and you get some nice dimension without popping up the entire leaf. Kind of looks like the leaves fell off the tree onto the card. Then I did add some really tiny thin strips of foam to the back of the happy, and I will pop this up on the top of the leaves here so it is popped up a little bit with that foam. And then I'll do the same for the letters in the word fall. I'm just adding those thin foam strips, cutting them to the length I need so that my letters that spell out the word fall can also be popped up off the leaves. So I'll just add each letter to the center of each leaf and that will make this card complete. This is pretty quick and simple, and I love all the bright colors. Thanks so much, Elise, for letting me remake your card today. I love the happy colors and that big maple leaf, and it makes me so ready for fall. Next up, I'm creating a shaker card. I'm using another new piece of the favorite flannel collection. This is a cream colored flannel, and I'm cutting out that outside in stitched maple leaf from the center of my panel. So now I have a maple leaf shaped opening, and for this shaker card I'm going to build the box for my shaker pieces kind of behind this panel. This leaf I'll just set aside. I could use it for another project in the future. I think that it's really pretty out of that cream flannel color. So since I'm creating the shaker behind this panel, I'm just putting a piece of acetate all over the back of this. So I have a piece cut there. You can see it has the tissue paper on it. And I'm just adding adhesive all over the back. And then I'll just layer the acetate right on top. Once I pull that tissue paper away, you can see I've got that shiny piece of acetate layered behind that leaf opening in the panel. Next, I'm pulling out the favorite flannel 6x6 pad, which has the same designs but at half the size. And I'm going to use this blue color here for my background piece. I'm cutting it to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 so it fits my card base. And when I layer the panel with the leaf, it will show a blue border around all 4 sides, as well as fill in the window of the leaf with this blue plaid. So I'll just add that to a card base and set it aside, and then I'm going to work on my front panel. I've cut the stitched maple leaf frame from some gold glitter cardstock, which I think is just beautiful, and then I've pulled out some other favorite die sets of mine, which is these stitched leaves and these small stitched leaves. You get all these really fun leaf shapes with that stitching detail. For these little leaves, I've just pulled out some sunflower cardstock, some canned pumpkin for that dark orange, and some fake tan for the lighter orange. And I'm just arranging these so that they will tuck behind the frame. Now for this one here, I am going to trim it off just a little bit so that it can tuck behind the frame but not overlap into my window. And I'm just adding each of these with some liquid glue so that they layer on top of each other nicely. I also have the little vine from the outside in stitched maple leaf die set cut from some dark brown glitter cardstock, and I'm just using that to kind of fill in and give even more interest to these little clusters of leaves. Now I'll work on the same thing in the top right corner. I have a few more leaves hiding over here off the side of my desk, and I'll just add another cluster of 3 up there, doing the same thing, making sure the ends of the leaves will be tucked either behind a leaf that's in front of it or behind the frame, so that these look like they're coming from behind the frame. I also have some more little vines cut from that brown glitter cardstock to add up there as well. And once I have these 2 little clusters all figured out and in place, I can add my glittery frame. And it will kind of make everything look nice and clean because everything's tucked behind that frame. Now for the sentiment, I pulled out the Thanks, Thanks, Thanks stamp set and cut 2 small banners out of kraft cardstock. I'm using some walnut ink to stamp the word thanks to the far right of this one, and then I will stamp the words so much to the far left of the other little banner. And this will allow me to hang the banner off the side of that card front. So you can see I've got so much and thanks up there at the top. And then I'll just trim off the part of those banners that hangs off the side of this panel. Now I can work on the shaker part of my card, and I cut a bunch of the frames from some cream colored cardstock, and I'm just stacking them with a little bit of liquid glue so that I create a nice box or well for my shaker pieces to go inside of. Now this is going to layer behind the panel we've been working on, and the shaker parts will go behind that leaf. So I'll just add some adhesive as well as liquid glue because I'm gluing this to the acetate that's on the back, and I want to make sure it sticks really well. And I'll just put a block on that, let it dry before I try to assemble everything. Now I've cut the little shaker pieces from the maple leaf frame set from some yellow cardstock and some orange as well as some kraft, and I just colored the tops of the little acorns with a Copic marker. You can see I colored the orange and the yellow ones, but I actually did not end up using them. And then I'm taking the leaves cut from the yellow and the orange and just adding a little bit of shading with some Distress Oxide ink so that they don't look quite so flat. Now I'm adding some foam tape, and I doubled this up, so it's double thickness foam tape because I needed the thickness to match the stack of maple leaf frames that I put on the back, and one layer wasn't enough because I made sure that it was stacked pretty high so that these pieces have a lot of room to move inside of the frame. And before I glue this down, I do want to add all my little shaker bits to the center of my card so that I can kind of capture them inside this shaker card. So I've just added the leaves, the acorns, and then to make them move around nicely, I like to add some seed beads. These are in a pale teal color. And you can see I'm trying to keep all of this centered so that I can just stick that leaf down. Then I also added some clear sequins just for a little bit of shine to catch your eye, some bigger pieces. And I'm just tucking those all in the center. That red leaf there was actually the one I was going to use on my card, but I ended up using the gold and loved the way it turned out. But I was using that just to make sure it all fit inside that opening. I've pulled the liner paper off all of my foam, and then I'm adding liquid glue to the back of the leaf itself. And then I'll just take this and center it up on my card base, capturing all those pieces inside that frame. And now I have this a really fun shaker card. And I like that the pieces inside can match the leaves on the outside because we have that die with the pieces that cut the things for the shaker. Now let's take a look at some cards by the design team. I love the bright colors that Mindy used for her leaves to create a background with a simple sentiment panel on top. Elena's shaker card is so pretty. I love how she enhanced the leaves and layered them behind that shaker leaf in the center. And then Letitia's card is so pretty. I love how she added in some pink with those fall colors and purple for a unique twist on fall. Mindy's shaker card is so much fun. It has a great sentiment with those sparkly shaker pieces behind. And then here is Elisa's card that inspired the card that I recreated today with those bright fall colors and that big bold sentiment. And then here's another look at the shaker card that I created in today's video. Thanks so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.